Welcome back. All right, so Detroit. We're going to talk about Detroit. So today I'm going to talk about Detroit, then I'm going to talk about St. Louis, finishing up my look at teams that missed the playoffs. This is a series that I have been doing going back to, I think it's 2017 is when I started doing this series. So for anybody who's like, there's other YouTubers that do this series. Yeah, I've done this for many years. Anyways, looking at the Detroit Red Wings, and I've always done it in the same way too, where I start with the team that finished at the bottom, work my way up to the teams that just missed the playoffs, and then I go into teams that did make the playoffs and get eliminated early, yada, yada, yada. But looking at Detroit, they are 41, 32, and 9 overall. They have 91 points this season, which is a good year. It was a good year for them. However, because of the fact that they barely missed the playoffs, I've seen comments on how this just shows that the rebuild hasn't really worked. That's untrue. We don't even have all of the young players on this roster yet that have been getting drafted by Steve Yzerman, so a bit early for people to say that. Plus, last year they had 80 points. They improved by 11 points this year. And again, they haven't even got some of their key young guys into the lineup yet. So their draft position this year is 15th. The draft lottery's done. Because I was going to do this yesterday. I started up the board and I was like, nah, draft lottery's today. Not much point in doing the video yesterday. So today we can do this and say, yep, draft position 15. When I do the St. Louis video, they're 16th. And again, whoever you draft at 15th, unlikely to be on your team within the first couple of years. It's possible, but unlikely. And so we'll see what Detroit does with that draft pick. Their coach, Derek Lalonde, I don't see any reason why he won't be back. That being said, I did jinx David Quinn at the start of this playlist, so fingers crossed. Their general manager, again, Steve Yzerman. And I've seen criticism of Yzerman. You're not going to get that from me. I feel like Yzerman's done a very good job of building this team, and it does take time. Really, these rebuilds take a long time. There is no really easy way to speed up a rebuild. Take a look at the Kings, though. Kings have been in the playoffs the last 3 seasons now. They've been out in the first round all 3 years, and now the criticism's starting to become, so why did Blake rush the rebuild? And look at these young prospects and draft picks he gave up that are actually pretty good elsewhere. So there's that fine line between knowing when to go for it and when not to. And again, if you're going to have a team that just gets knocked out in the first round every year, is that better than building up through this rebuilding process and making your team a contender, right? And so then the debate can be, will the Wings be a contender? Well, for goal scoring, they're 9th in the NHL this year. Goals against, 24th. The problem being blue line / goaltending. And the goaltending numbers weren't fantastic. Alex Lyon had a good start to the season. I think by the end of the year, I think the workload, it really, his numbers ended up being right around average. But I think that for next season, they might be wise to figure out exactly who that starter is going to be to get them into the playoffs. Because this is a team that should start to get into the playoffs and then start working their way up. So again, the playoff drought being 8 seasons, but they started with a 14-7-3 start. Pretty good start to the year, and then they were 1-6-1 after that. They had a 6-game winning streak that was followed by a 7-game losing streak. So these are the hallmarks of a young team that's building and learning how to win. I don't see any reason to be panicked if you are a Detroit fan about the way things have been going, because I still think this is a playoff team next year. I'd be very surprised if they're not, because they've been improving every single season. Not at the rate some people would like, but they've definitely been improving. So when we look at their top 3 scorers, Lucas Raymond, 82 games, 31 goals, 41 assists, 72 points. Fantastic season for Raymond, especially that second half of the year. He really started to show he could be a franchise forward. Larkin had a very good season too. He missed 14 games due to injury, so he played 68 games, 33 goals, 36 assists, 69 points. If Larkin's going to be a 40-goal point-per-game player going forward, that's a pretty strong captain they've got right there. DeBrincat had a great start to the season, and then it faded. 82 games, 27 goals, 40 assists, 67 points. And if there's one issue with this team, it might be some of the contracts. Not like they have any problem with cap space on the face of it right now, but again, this summer a lot of that's going to get eaten into. And then we're looking at players who are 22 and younger who've been in the lineup as well. Moritz Seider, 82 games, 9 goals, 33 assists, 42 points. We're going to find out what Steve Yzerman thinks he's worth this summer. That should be interesting. Edvinsson got into 16 games, 1 goal, 1 assist for him. Edvinsson a little slower coming along, but there's still, the projection is he'll be a top 2 defenseman in the National Hockey League. And then the goaltending. Lyon finished 21-18-5, 904 save percentage. Reimer, 11-8-2, also had a 904 save percentage. And Husso, 9-5-2 with an 892 save percentage. Ville Husso had a harder time of it, but his win-loss record was pretty good. So I guess Detroit played differently in front of him than they did in front of Lyon or Reimer. But either way, the goaltending is going to be a point of conversation throughout the summer. They're pending unrestricted free agents. Interesting. David Perron, for instance. I don't know if they bring Perron back. I'm thinking probably not. Patrick Kane, if he wants to come back, they'll find a way to make it work. Kane had a really strong run with them, especially down the stretch there. Really wanted to be in the playoffs. I think they won 5 of their last 6 as well, to at least make it interesting, right? Sprong had a really good season for Detroit. I think it'd be wise for him to stay and for them to bring him back. Fisher, up and down season. We'll see what happens. Gostisbehere had a strong year. So, again, we'll see what that's worth. Reimer probably hits market. I don't know that they necessarily bring him back. Shimmick was picked up from San Jose via trade. He's an unrestricted free agent this summer. Zarnik and Michael Hutchinson, goaltender. All of them likely go into market, or we'll see how much it costs to keep them. And then the pending restricted free agents. So the big talking point is going to be 2 contracts that need to be signed this summer. What is Lucas Raymond worth? He had a fantastic second half of the season. He's going to get paid, right? And then you've got Moritz Seider, really strong season, 42 points. And if you're of the belief that the sky's the limit with Seider, and if the team agrees and the player agrees, he could get in the $10 million a year range. He absolutely could, with the way that the market is right now and the way the market's going. So we'll see how much Raymond and Seider get, because the cap space for this team is $29,067,380 as of July the 1st. And that cap space is going to get eaten into really quickly with the names on this list, both pending UFAs and RFAs. So between Kane, Raymond, and Seider, how much of that almost $30 million gets eaten up if they keep Kane and if they re-sign Raymond and Seider? Then you've got Joe Veleno, not a huge raise for Veleno, I wouldn't think, and Jonathan Berggren, who, yes, deserves to be on their roster full-time. I would think Berggren gets a one-way contract and very likely ends up on their roster full-time next season. So why this is all interesting, too, is when you look at some of the contracts they have on the roster, they're not contracts that have worked out great. And Andrew Kopp, a player I like quite a bit, but at the $5.625 million cap hit, I understand why people don't like the contract. That's until 2027. So if they want to get rid of that contract, it's not going to be cheap. Sherratt, $4.75 million per season for 2 more years, so it runs till 2026. And again, if they want to, if they end up in a cap crunch for some reason, or for instance, let's say they sign Raymond, they sign Seider, and they bring back Kane, but then they want to bring somebody else in, they may have to get rid of a contract in order to do that. And Hall is a contract that there's been rumors about how they're going to move this contract. $3.4 million for 2 more years for Hall. Considering he wasn't in the top 6 by the end of the season, that contract's already not aged well. I don't know that you can get rid of that. And Ville Husso, $4.75 million contract for 1 more year. So do you just eat that 1 more year? Probably. But are they going to go into next season with Lyon and Husso as their tandem? I don't think so. Again, this is a team that's going to be looking to improve and make the playoffs. Because for Yzerman, if this team takes a step back next year, that's where we can start talking about whether or not the process has failed. To this point, I would say no, honestly. And then you look at who's on the way. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, a lot of the young players not on the team yet. That includes Axel Sandin Pelika, a defenseman, or Pelika, and Marco Kasper, a center. So Kasper hasn't come up and played yet. Nate Danielson, a center they drafted in the first round this last year, right? Sebastian Casa, goaltender, and Trey Augustine, goaltender. So they have 2 pretty good prospects in net right there, so one or the other's got to hit, right? And then Carter Mazur as well, who can play on the left side or the right side. There are a lot of good young prospects with this Detroit team. They're considered to have one of the best prospect rankings. They have one of the best prospect rankings in the National Hockey League, and there's good reason to think this team's only going to get better. Because one of 2 things happens. Either the young players come in and they add to the strength of the roster up front on the blue line, potentially in net as well, or some of those young players get moved out to bring in veterans that can help boost the team on the ice right now. Either way, you're looking at a Detroit team that should continue to improve. And that's the key thing, is that continued improvement. So Detroit fans, do you believe there'll be continued improvement? This will be a playoff team next year, or no? Has it been, it's 8 seasons, it's long enough, and at this point you're just kind of beside yourself. Because again, to me, a team that's getting better every year, I don't see any reason why they can't get better next year too. But I also understand some that may still feel kind of a little discouraged with how the season ended, that they just barely miss. And that's after they had a start to the season where it looked like they were going to easily make the playoffs. That was something that I was kind of happy about. I was like, this would be great having Detroit back in the playoffs. And then the struggles showed up. So let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.